Russia has begun a large-scale military attack on Ukraine, having first declared it recognizes Donetsk and Luhansk as separate states. Russia is violating international law, the prohibition in the United Nations Charter on the use of force, violating the obligation to respect the sovereignty and territorial integrity of other states, and violating the prohibition on intervention. But Russia is using the language of the law to defend its actions. In all the recent verbiage of President Vladimir Putin, some attempts at legal arguments can be elicited, but they do not stand up to scrutiny. There have been no threats of force against Russia from Ukraine nor from NATO member states. There is nothing to support a legal justification for Russia's military attack against Ukraine. Article 2 of the UN Charter prohibits the threat or use of force, with the only two Charter exceptions to this prohibition being self-defense and action mandated by the UN Security Council. In his speech on the 23rd of February, Putin points to two grounds on which Russia relies on self-defense: defense in aid of the two breakaway republics, and self-defense in the light of threats against Russia itself. Putin said the People's Republics of Donbass turned to Russia with a request for help, and went on to seek to justify his military action under Article 51 of the Charter. But it is only in respect of states that the right of collective self-defense exists. Humanitarian intervention on behalf of individuals in a state has not gained a place in international law. And it is only Russia which has recognized the statehood of the two regions. Putin repeated on the 23rd of February his earlier allegation that the people of the two breakaway republics are being repressed by the Ukraine government, and even that genocide is being committed against them. This baseless allegation is relevant not only to the claim of self-defense on behalf of these regions, but also to Russia's recognition of them as separate states. International law does not give the inhabitants of a part of a state the right to secede from that state. The aspect of self-determination, which allows for independence of a people, applies to peoples in colonies and other overseas territories under the occupation of another state. The other aspect of self-determination is internal and comprises the right to freely choose political status and pursue economic, social, and cultural development within the state, as the Minsk Accords sought to provide for Donetsk and Luhansk. There is a somewhat controversial theory in international law that would give a right of secession from a state if the people in question were subject to extreme abuse of human rights and systematic oppression. This is the theory of remedial secession, which some countries, such as Switzerland, used in the International Court of Justice, ICJ, in relation to Kosovo's declaration of independence from Serbia, an independence still not recognized by Russia. But the theory has no support from the international courts, and even if it did, Russia itself has stated previously that a right of remedial secession is limited to truly extreme circumstances, such as an outright, armed attack by the parent state, threatening the very existence of the people in question. See Russia's submissions to the ICJ in the Kosovo case, para 88. Ukraine retained its membership in the UN at the dissolution of the USSR, having been one of the founding members of the UN, as the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic. The facts do not substantiate Russia's claims anyway. The law is as stated on behalf of the UN Secretary-General on the 21st of February that Russia's decision to recognize the independence of the breakaway regions is a violation of the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine and inconsistent with the principles of the Charter of the United Nations. There are no states which can request the use of military force. Is Ukraine a threat against Russia? Putin refers to the further expansion of the infrastructure of the North Atlantic Alliance, the military development of the territories of Ukraine, as creating an anti-Russia, comprising a real threat not just to our interests, but to the very existence of our state, its sovereignty. Article 51 allows for self-defense if an armed attack occurs. This has been interpreted by many states to include defense against the threat of an imminent attack. For example, there is no requirement to wait until a nuclear strike has begun. But under no interpretation of imminence can the situation in Ukraine constitute a threat to Russia. There have been no threats of force against Russia from Ukraine nor from NATO member states. There is nothing to support a legal justification for Russia's military attack against Ukraine. The myth of Ukraine never having had real statehood also does not give any legal justification for Russian aggression. The UN is based on the principle of the sovereign equality of all its members, Act 2.1 of the UN Charter. Ukraine retained its membership in the UN at the dissolution of the USSR, having been one of the founding members of the UN as the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic. What are the legal consequences of Russia's actions? Within the UN, it is the Security Council which has the mandate to uphold international peace and security, and act when there is a threat to the peace. But there will be no help from there with Russia's status as a permanent member holding a veto. The UN General Assembly may act instead. Since 2014 it has adopted a series of resolutions, the latest on the 9th of December 2021, requiring Russia to withdraw immediately and unconditionally from Crimea. But the General Assembly does not have the powers of the Security Council and cannot mandate peacekeepers or the use of force. In due course there may be the need for inquiries to be launched by the UN Human Rights Commission if there are breaches of human rights law and international humanitarian law, and human rights cases may be brought against Russia at the European Court of Human Rights. But international institutions do not have the necessary powers to stop what is going on right now. International law gives the right to Ukraine, being attacked, to call for support from other states. And as well as imposing sanctions, states may wish to consider cyber countermeasures. Some of the recent cyber activity against Ukraine has been attributed by the US, UK, and Australia to the Russian Main Intelligence Unit, GRU.